Okay, so then now let's talk about the cerebrum and cerebellum. So this part right here, this is your cerebrum. So this is the largest part of your brain. When you think of the brain, this is the part that's pretty obvious, right? So this entire thing is your cerebrum. Then don't confuse it. It sounds very similar. It's spelled very similarly, but you have the cerebellum over here. So cerebrum, the biggest part, cerebellum. I think a common misconception, they think cerebellum is the biggest word or the longer word. Therefore, they think this is the cerebellum. The cerebellum is actually this part right here. So cerebrum is actually your largest part of your brain, but the cerebellum, so the etymology and origin of that word actually means little brain. Because if you look at the cerebellum, it almost looks like a small cerebrum, just like a little kind of tacked on right here. So that's why it's called the cerebellum. So the great thing is that the cerebellum is very important in motor movement and precision. So actually coordinating all your movements. Like you can move, you can have your motor neurons firing, but how do you make sure that everything's coordinated, especially when you're walking, playing sports, or doing anything involving complex skeletal muscle movement, that where you have to have multiple skeletal muscles contracting at the right time so you don't fall over and hit your face. So the cerebellum is actually very important in this motor movement and actually in motor learning. You know how they say like you never forget how to ride a bike? So maybe it's been years since you rode a bike and you rode a bike as a kid, you knew how to do that all the way through grade school. And then maybe when you're an adult, you try to, or actually you guys are just adults, but say you haven't ridden for years, but do you have to go through the whole process of wobbling, using tricycle, just trying to taking off your training wheels, wobbling as you're trying to pedal fast enough so you won't lose your balance? No, I mean, it might be shaky at first, but it eventually kicks in. Or say, or any sort of skill, like say when all the gyms open again, and maybe you won't be squatting and deadlifting as much as you used to, but do you have to start all over again and know how to do those movements? Or what's another example? Oh, like when I was in San Francisco, I mean, every winter, luckily my college, we had a weekly ski trips, and I took full advantage of that. Like I went every week, and I actually got pretty good. Like my goal during my stay up there in San Francisco. Okay, I'm gonna start to do. I want to get up to black diamonds, and I did. But 5 years later, I haven't touched snow. I haven't touched a snowboard or even looked at a snowboard that whole time. Then I go to Whistler. Like, did I have to start on the bunny slopes all over again and fall over on my face every time or on my butt every time? No, I mean, it was shaky at first, but I mean, by the end of the trip, I was able to get back to, I mean, even doing blue runs was pretty, like, I think by the second, third day, I was able to do it. I didn't get back to black diamonds, but what am I getting at here? So I had all this, or when you heard that term muscle memory, this is what the cerebellum is kind of involved with. So motor learning, how do you do these motor skills? How do you coordinate your movements? And how do you bring them back? So the cerebellum is actually very important in kind of bringing back these muscle memory, so to speak. But actually, I shouldn't put in quote. I mean, you do have muscle memory. And cerebellum is very important in that as well. All right, so more views of the cerebellum, and yeah, so it has all these folds, and actually this is a really cool part of the cerebellum. Now, what we have here, if you divide it right in the middle, you might not see this, but say you go a little more lateral and divide it that way. So here we have a sagittal view. It's actually, or actually you can kind of see it from here, but say you go a little more offset and lateral. And then you have something called the Arbor vitae. So if you've heard that, like, what's Arbor Day? It's plant a tree day, right? It's about trees. And vitae is a Latin term meaning life. So basically what it's saying, this is the tree of life, and it's really cool. You have all these white matter branches, and the leaves are like the gray matter. So it's like saying you have the tree of life within your cerebellum. I thought, actually really like this name because it actually kind of looks and it's very descriptive.